With rising inventory, are we finally starting to see a slowdown in our real estate market? Let's talk about that and more in this week's segment of Market Watch. Hi everyone, thank you so much for tuning into this week's segment of Market Watch. My name is Joshua Barks. I'm an associate broker with Keller Williams Realty Boise and the Barks & Co. real estate team. If you're new here to my channel, on a weekly basis, we talk about the Boise area housing market and everything that's going on a week-over-week basis. And then once a month, we go into our deep dive market dynamics to talk about what's happening on a really nitty-gritty scale with those numbers and supply and demand and projections for the future. If you missed the latest market dynamics video, that was last week, so I'll link that in the description below. And this week I wanted to talk about our rising inventory, and the question that I'm getting a lot and what I'm hearing from a lot of agents is, are we in a shift? Are we slowing down? We have a lot more listings coming on the market, and fewer buyers for them. So are we in a market shift? And the funny part with that is we actually won't know if this is a true shift until, this time next year or 6 months from now, looking back and going like, yep, that's when the shift happened. But what we're actually seeing is inventory is coming up. Finally, we are still down significantly from what we had the same time last year. And then if you go back even a year before all the craziness, we're less than half of what the inventory was then too. So still crazy tight inventory market, even though it is coming up, which is good news for those buyers that are sticking around. So we have 491 active listings in Ada County right now. 189 new listings hit in the last 7 days. Last week we had 456 active and 252 new listings last week that hit, which is actually a record for us pre-pandemic. We haven't seen that many listings hit the market in 1 week since before the pandemic last year, which is crazy. Then when we're talking about the number of pending sales, so yeah, inventory is rising, but what's going on with demand? What are our pendings? Well, pendings are up. So just as inventory is rising, the number of pending is coming up too. So kind of like what I was saying earlier this year, as inventory rises, because demand is there, and it's hard to tell what our true demand is because our inventory is so low, so the number of pendings doesn't reflect the number of buyers that are actually out there. Well, we have 491 active and we have 815 that are pending. Last week we had 778 that are pending. So we're doing fantastic on the demand side, staying very consistent there. Last week we had 237 homes get an accepted contract, and this week we had 238 homes that got an accepted contract. Then when we're looking at the sales, so not just ones that are going in escrow, but the ones that actually close, we are staying pretty consistent there as well. 183 sold last week. This week we had 192 sell. So when you're looking at that, you're like, oh, well, are we in a shift? Well, one thing to note that these numbers won't show you is that listings are getting less offers. So instead of competing against 20 other people, 15 to 20 other people, let's say, other offers on each property, we're now seeing like 5 to 10 offers on each property, which is actually great news for the buyers that are doing what I've been talking about all year, because this is the market of perseverance. So the ones that are sticking it out are the ones that are winning. And if you're looking at this as a buyer and you're very discouraged about not being able to find something, well, there's great news. 815 buyers were successful even in this market. So we have 815 buyers that did it, 491 sellers that are hoping to sell, and that can happen for you. Just make sure that your agent knows how to navigate the market, knows how to structure your offer to still be competitive, because yeah, you may not be competing against 20 people, but you're still competing against 5 or 10. So it's still really important to make sure that you have an agent that knows how to compete and how to navigate this crazy market. So when we're looking at, is this a shift with inventory coming up and demand cooling off? Because when we look at interest rates nationally, they actually dipped again this week, 2.93 for the 30-year fixed, according to Freddie Mac's research. And what they've been saying is that mortgage applicants, so people that are applying for home loans, are down slightly as well. So we're seeing a steady decline in the number of new applications going in, so the number of new home buyers, unless more cash is coming into the market, but that doesn't seem to be the case based on the sales that we're having here locally. But overall, I think what we're seeing for buyers right now is really two things. First and foremost is what we call in the real estate world buyer fatigue. So we have buyers that are looking for a really long time and they miss out on the first house. Oh, their heart breaks, and then they find another one, and then they miss out on that one. And then that keeps happening over and over and over and over. Well, eventually, one of two things is going to happen. One, that buyer is either going, well, I guess three things, if the third thing being they persevere, like I've been saying, just keep trying. But the first thing that could happen is they just give up. This is too hard. It's too hard emotionally. And what we want's not out there. So I'm just going to put home buying on pause. Okay, that's option one. Option two is they are looking in a neighborhood and they were unwilling to pay X price, 6 months ago, but now that same house is now worth $50,000 more or whatever it happens to be. So now they just really can't afford to live in or buy in the neighborhood that they want to buy in. So instead of doing that, they just stay put. They remodel their existing home, they continue renting or what have you, a lot of other situations there. So that also happens with buyer fatigue. They just go on pause because they're priced out of the market. And then of course the third thing, like I said, persevering. You have the buyers that are still trying, still going out there and getting after it, because now is actually a fantastic time as a buyer because you're not competing against 20 people. You're only competing against 10. You have more of a chance to actually be successful as a buyer in this market, even though it's still a very crazy seller's market right now. So that's one of them. Buyer fatigue. Buyers just getting tired of home shopping and getting their heart broken emotionally. So they're just kind of on pause. Then the second one is it's summertime, the weather is beautiful, and school is out. And guess what? For the first time in over a year, there isn't pandemic restrictions all over the place where countries are completely locked down. The vaccine is essentially widely available for anybody that wants one. So being able to travel right now has just opened up the world. So everyone that's been really cooped up over the last year is now taking the time to travel to Hawaii, to go to Europe, to just get out of their house and go on summer vacation, go camping and things like that. So we are seeing a lot more people take vacations right now than we have in a long time because they can for the first time. So yes, we are having some buyers that are getting tired and giving up on the market or getting priced out of where they are. But I think a large segment of people no longer applying for loan like that, kind of declining, and then seeing fewer offers is because buyers are distracted. They're going on vacation. The house hunt has left them disheartened, so they want to fill up their cup and go on vacation and do something that they enjoy. So we're seeing that too, and that's what I really think is happening. I don't think what we're seeing is a true market shift where prices are actually going to start coming down, because we would still need demand to diminish by at least half again, and we would need inventory to at least double or triple to balance that out before we start seeing prices come down. So prices are still going to continue to appreciate, hopefully not at the pace that they have been so far this year, because like last week's video, we've come up 11 point something percent since the beginning of the year. I talked about it briefly in last week's video with not seeing another 11% for the last half of the year. And this is why. This is part of why with, some buyer fatigue and things like that. So it's going to still be crazy competitive, but I don't think things are still going to go for 200,000 over asking and all of that. It just kind of depends on the property and things like that. And then the other part on not buyer segment, but on the seller side, I am seeing a lot more overpriced listings hit the market. Shame, shame, shame. So sellers are going, oh my gosh, the market has never been better. Let's just ask for this astronomical price and hope somebody takes it. And yes, that does happen once in a while. We call it a needle in a haystack. Somebody, usually from out of state that doesn't understand our market, goes, yep, that seems like a great deal compared to where I'm from, buys it and moves on. And what we're seeing is homes are staying on, those overpriced ones are staying on the market for a little bit longer. So as long as you're not in the probably 800,000 plus market, if you're 800,000 and below, if your home's been on the market for more than 2 weeks, you should really take another look at your pricing strategy there. How many showings have you had? Have you had any offers at all? Things like that, because you're probably overpriced. And we're seeing even that in the lower end. I mean, I know I said below 800, but even in like the 400,000, the 300,000 range, we're still seeing some overpriced listings that are sitting there. They're reducing and then eventually getting 3 or 4 offers and selling. So really important to have an agent that understands the market and can actually guide you on your pricing strategy when you're a seller as well, even when the market is great. Okay, so that's kind of a wrap on what we have for this week. It's a little bit longer because I wanted to talk about how the market is softened right now, but is likely not an actual shift, but we won't know for several months probably, or at least a couple months, and then we'll have an indication of if this is a blip or a trend. So you don't know until you're further along. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My number's at the bottom of the screen, 208-914-1095. I hope everyone has a fantastic Juneteenth and a happy Father's Day weekend as well. And we will see you next week for next week's update, and it'll be shorter. All right, bye.